All right, let's have a look at the stories that are making headlines around the world this morning. And we start with the Financial Times, funnily enough, because that's got US Treasury Secretary Tim Geithner calling for politicians and bankers to, quote, cast aside political paralysis and misplaced fears over inflation and moral hazard to stimulate growth in the economy.
And to mark the upcoming 10th anniversary of the September the 11th attacks, The Times has an interview with the former British Prime Minister Tony Blair, in which he warns Iran is the real enemy and that regime change must be pursued there and in Syria.
No prizes for second best. That's the Daily Telegraph story, which says Prime Minister David Cameron is going to call for a return to elitism in schools and attack the prizes for all culture, in which winners are apparently shunned and competition is frowned upon.
Google has divulged a secret in the International Herald Tribune, its power use. The paper says the search engine's data centre uses around 260 million watts, which is the equivalent of 1/4 of the output.
Now, The Independent says Cliff Richards is going to be smiling today because he'll afford a few more summer holidays. That's if the EU ratifies an extension to its copyright laws, meaning royalties for songs can be claimed for 70 rather than 50 years.
Scrum, ruck, rolling maul, it's time to brush up on rugby union terms because the Sports World Cup kicks off in New Zealand today, and The Times says All Blacks captain Richie McGraw will be hoping to jump for joy after the final in 6 weeks' time.
Cornelia Meyer, CEO of the business consultancy MRL Corporation, joins us now to go through the papers. Good morning. Thank you very much for coming in. Starting with the Financial Times, basically urging the politicians in Washington to throw aside their political affiliations and just get on with the job, and has put forward $450 billion worth.
It's a lot of money, but I think Obama is on the right track here, because if you look at it, 2/3 of jobs are created by small and medium scale companies, and that's what that's whom he's trying to help. And we had so far a jobless recovery. We have big corporations sitting on a lot of cash, doing nothing with it. So it is about jobs in America, and we're going into an election cycle. So I guess Timothy Geithner did what he had to do in this case.
Do you think, though, that there is a sense that governments now have to adjust policy in order to solve the economic woes of both the United States and Europe, and the central bankers are slightly throwing their hands in the air and saying there's nothing more we can do?
Well, I don't quite think so, because I think the central bankers can do some what we're talking about is a sort of QE, whatever, sequel to QE. And they may have to do something. But the problem is the debt levels we have, we are at sort of zero interest. We've run out of tools.
And why are jobs or job creation so critical to the US economy and indeed to President Obama's prospects for re-election?
Well, not just the US economy, every economy. People who don't earn anything can't consume anything. And if nobody consumes anything, nobody needs to produce anything. So we do need people with money in their hands to go out and buy all that stuff that corporations produce.
Here, the former Prime Minister Tony Blair of the UK is saying that Iran is the real enemy. Is there anything new in what he's saying here? Anything insightful?
There's nothing new in what he's saying, and we know Iran is an enemy, and we know what's going on in Syria is really appalling in terms of the loss of life. But the question is also always who says it, and how is it said? It is not that credible from Tony Blair, given, that he was the one behind going into Iraq, telling us Iraq was the enemy. It is also, if you look at it from the Middle Eastern perspective, it may come across unfortunate having the Prime Minister of, we used to be a colonial nation, saying, thou must have regime change. Right he may be, but was he the right person to say it, and was this the right time to say it, is my question.
Mm-hmm. Also on the Times, which I think is perhaps a slightly more grabby story, frankly, is that picture. Can you see, I don't know if you privileged enough to witness a spectacle yesterday.
Ladies and gentlemen, David Cameron playing a rock. First of all, I didn't realise he was left-handed.
Well, exactly.
Let's hope he is.
A pretty mean forehand. And did you see him playing Boris Johnson?
I don't know. It doesn't look that mean at all. He's got his legs in the wrong place.
And look, clearly he's out. He's out of puff, that's for sure. So he might need a little bit more training. But did you see the impromptu tennis match between Boris Johnson and David Cameron?
No, I didn't see that, but I thought it was very good that David Cameron was supporting sort of the Paralympics and with disabilities getting into sports.
Absolutely. Now, he also said we need elitism in schools. In the Daily Telegraph, and there is a picture actually next to him of Boris Johnson, who we didn't mention.
Which we'll show you. We'll show you. The partner. First of all, let's deal with the partner, the other player.
A slightly less athletic figure. It has to be
there you are. Look, now there's a face.
Mean,
there's
but
a face.
unathletic, perhaps. Anyway, the point is that he says that elitism in schools is actually important. And the key line in this, I thought, because it relates to the Economic Times, is failure to create elitism would be fatal to prosperity. Is he right?
I think it's unfortunate wording. What he means is he wants competitiveness, he wants good standards. Elitism, to me, is a certain segment of society will go to certain schools. So I think what he says is right. We need to become more competitive in our schools so we can compete with the Indias, the Chinas, and so on. He's absolutely right
and
there.
Reward excellence.
Absolutely, reward excellence. But what is a bit worrisome is lower down he says, oh, and parents and, you know, the big society thing, parents and everybody and charities should get involved and faith schools. Well, I think we should really leave it to the professionals to educate our children.
Now Google in the International Herald Tribune have fessed up, haven't they, really? And they consume quite a bit of power, apparently.
But that's nothing new, and I think they're becoming more and more efficient. But can we go back to 2000 when California had this electricity crisis? It was because the electricity sector could no longer cope with the information society, you know, Silicon Valley, where this all happened. So nothing new, but like everybody, they will become more and more efficient. Like we have new light bulbs, they will have new service.
And Cliff Richard, it looks like, you know, any opportunity to talk about Cliff. I used to write to Cliff Richard when I was very young.
Wow, did you?
Yeah, I did. I had a real obsession with Cliff Richard. He never wrote back. But it's a shame that things didn't develop because he looks like he's going to be even richer than he is already.
Absolutely, but more importantly, what's the Cliff appeal? Can you define it?
No, I can't.
I mean, you clearly can.
Absolutely. I can't. He never had any appeal. But on the extension of the intellectual property rights, not a bad thing. The Cliff Richards don't need it, but there's some people who earn less, so for them to earn it over a longer period, surely a good thing, especially in the light of, you know, the downloading, getting. But
also,
worse.
in the interest of actually promoting entrepreneurism, intellectual property rights are important for companies who design things and want to move forward and keep hold of that design. Cliff can probably live without the extra bucks, I would imagine.
Well, it's good for him to have another holiday.
Yeah, of course.
Or 7. Are you a rugby fan?
Yes.
Oh,
and
that's taken me aback.
And yes, and I will of course support any of our nations. You know, we have Wales, we have Scotland, and we have England running. So any of them should do well.
But interestingly, I hear that Russia is taking part in the Rugby World Cup for the first time. Do they play? I mean, do they play traditionally?
It has big lads. No, it's not a rugby nation.
They do have big lads,
but they have big lads, and big lads play good rugby.
Enough said. Cornelia Meyer, thank you so much indeed for coming in and taking us through our paces with the newspapers this morning here at BBC World News. Very quickly, just to remind you, the top story this morning is President Obama